So, welcome to the Market Mentors podcast, Amit.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure. Now, I've got to be honest, this topic fascinates me, but before we dig into it, I'd love to know what your relationship is with account-based marketing.
What's my relationship with it? I'm in love with it. I'm thinking that at some point, all marketing, B2B enterprise, will become account-based marketing.
Yep.
Just for the simple fact that anyone out there today is just intolerable to irrelevant marketing. And the whole concept behind account-based marketing is being laser focused, specific on certain accounts, creating value in your marketing communications, unlike your, traditional, I wouldn't say spray and pray because we're way beyond that, but more, let's say, broad, one, two, few, many kind of marketing. So, especially when you're targeting executives, if you don't have a laser focused approach, your ability to climb above the clutter that they already receive is almost, impossible.
And you touched on the sort of definition, if you like, of account-based marketing. But when you talk to different people, you do get a slightly different angle. For the purpose of this conversation, and what do you mean by account-based marketing?
So it's an amazing question, and I think that one of the best definitions that I heard probably 6 years back was the definition of account-based marketing is the perfect alignment between sales and marketing, right? And it covers it all, right? Because end of the day, the outcome of an ABM approach is to focus all of your artillery toward the same target, so to speak, right? So you're taking all of your market resource, all of your marketing activity, all of the sales activity, and all of the commercial organization's activity in the business are aimed and focused towards the same subject, towards the same target. And that creates a perfect alignment. All of the discussion around the sales marketing friction is outside of, the picture because you're all, bought into the TAM, to the total addressable market. You're all aligned in terms of the efforts that are placed on that TAM. You're all aligned in terms of the prioritization of the accounts. So whenever, marketing hands off an account, or whenever marketing needs to create that kind of like aerial support for accounts in the pipeline, everyone knows what's going on and everyone's fully aligned. So it's not the textbook definition, but one of the most amazing things about ABM is that it creates that seamless alignment between sales and marketing, and that's huge. Usually, one of the biggest challenges in organizations where marketing services sales.
No, I definitely agree with that. And would you say that's still the case, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-a-few, or one-to-many then? Are you encapsulating account-based marketing in all those different buckets?
100%. So one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many, those are different tactics within a given approach or strategy, right? So ABM is the strategy. And the idea behind ABM is, again, that all of your artillery, and pardon me for using this military language, but all of your artillery is aimed towards a given, known, well-defined target. And then, fine, upper funnel, you can work on, one to few or one to many, but one to many's definition there would probably be vertical based or geo based. And then as you go down the funnel, and again, you need to design this differently for each business and each use case. But for us, as you go down the funnel, you become more and more personalized. And the idea is that once there are higher chances of closing the account, we're willing to pay or resource more effort into that account. Because obviously one-to-one is much more effort when you scale it than one-to-few or one-to-many. If that makes sense.
It does. Now, we're obviously here to talk about Optimove's sort of shift to account-based marketing. But before that happened then, what was Optimove's marketing approach?
Beforehand?
Yes.
So I'd say the traditional marketing, a lot of lead generation with, kind of like a lead, marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead, sales accepted lead, opportunity, and so on and so forth. Looking at that specific individual within a specific company that is likely to buy at this point or another a Optimove's offering. And it's more of, I'd call it as an approach, reactive marketing. You're kind of like spreading that net and waiting for the right prospects to come. So yes, even if you go and do like this kind of display campaign on LinkedIn or whatever, then you'd create this audience and then put the relevant stakeholders. But usually your messaging is quite broad, and you're saying, you're kind of like betting on this being the right time. I'm targeting you. This is my value proposition. Click here. I'll try to convert you. I'll try to get your email. I'll try to start creating a sales conversation. But it's more reactive, since you're waiting for the prospect to take a first step, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And just to rewind then, Optimove itself then, I mean, essentially, what are you marketing? Who is your audience? What are the sort of deal sizes, perhaps just to put a bit of context behind it?
Yeah, so Optimove is a significant player in the marketing technology space, specifically multi-channel marketing. So we're, in terms of the categories we fall into, so we're a leader in Forrester's Wave for cross-channel campaign management, a challenger in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for multi-channel marketing hubs. So that's one space. The other space is CDP, Customer Data Platform, but also there are a few types of those, so more of the actionable CDP. And in other words, the technology, when I like to kind of like explain it very shortly, it's the patty and the burger. You have the data under it, and you have the execution channels above it, and that just takes the data in, does all its voodoo, unification, flattening the data, predictive analytics on top of it and such, provides the marketer access to their data, the ability to build segments, create treatments, and then execute them through the channels. So part of the channels are native in Optimove, others are integrated into it, but the idea is kind of like orchestrating all of your communications with your existing customers. We sell into retail, gaming, financial services, QSR, and several other verticals that are by definition selling directly to the consumer. And we're talking about enterprise companies, usually companies, somewhere between 100 million turnaround, annual turnaround, to, a lot of billions.
Gotcha.
And the buyers, and again, this is part of the ABM approach, but there is no buyer, there's a buyer committee, right? So that's kind of like the decision maker usually is the CMO. The influencers are, the marketing program manager or the email marketing manager or other direct CRM directors and such. And others involved in the process are your usual suspects, finance, procurement, legal, and such, and IT. Since if you remember, the bottom patty is data, so you need someone to work the data into the system.
You can't forget the IT guys, and a pretty competitive space. I would have thought, been in the sort of MarTech category. A lot of noise in there. So, I mean, when we're talking about your shift then to account-based marketing, what was the trigger for you making that shift?
So I think that the understanding that you need to kind of like focus is something that's very much aligned with the maturity of the company, right? When you're an early stage startup, you have this idea, you build a product, and you try to find this product market fit. You try to figure things out as you move. So you need to keep kind of broad in order to see what comes in, and you need to be reactive to the market. At some point in your maturity, when you already have, significant revenues, and you want to make, you want to kind of like become more effective in your marketing treatment, that's the point in time you have a good idea of, what's your addressable market, where you have that product market fit. You can easily and clearly define who you want to be as your customers, and to the level of a list of companies. I can list this and that thousands of accounts that by name, each and every one of them could be a client of ours. Obviously, there are priority between them. And again, out of the total addressable market, you have a selected addressable market. But end of the day, you need to be at a place or at a maturity level where you can say, okay, this is a list of 3,000, 4,000 accounts. Each and every one of them could be an Optimove client at one point in time or another. And kind of like, this is my ideal list. Now, if you can create that list, you should probably, to a certain extent, start working or start deploying an ABM approach. It's not all or nothing. In our case, we went all in, but many companies that I'm in touch with and I'm familiar with kind of like, play on that spectrum. Okay, so I'm still, investing 20, 30, 40% of my marketing spend on traditional marketing, and then the rest on account-based. In our case, since, we were able to define very, very well what that target total addressable market is. What's the selected addressable market subset of that? And kind of like what we want to do with them. What are our growth goals? And that, if we're able to maintain a certain win rate and conversion rates within that TAM, we'll be able to hit or even exceed our goals. Then we decided to go all in.
Makes sense. And I'd see more often actually that blended approach that you talk about, where people are still sort of keeping a sort of a wider breadth on activities, including things like account-based marketing. But I mean, just talk to me about the conversations you had then, because coming up with an idea like this and perhaps walking into the founders or the investors and saying, look, we're going to ignore the TAM, we're going to ignore this big market over here, and actually we're just going to focus all our arsenal, if you like, on this list of accounts. I can imagine there being a bit of a pause in the conversation, and some people thinking, do you know what? What sort of reactions did you get when you sort of floated that idea?
So luckily, when we started planning into it somewhere around end of 2019, our board was familiar with the concept of account-based marketing. Even before we kind of started thinking in that direction, I remember board meetings where they said, "Are you familiar with account-based marketing? Did you try this kind of approach?" So when I came and you kind of like put that bomb there and said, "We're going all in, fully blown account-based marketing," kind of like the awareness of this concept was already there, and then from there to kind of like creating the business case, saying, "Listen, this is our win rate, this is our conversion rate. This is kind of like the amount of pipeline we're able to generate for sales. If we run on an account-based approach, we just do while maintaining or improving these KPIs and stats, we're able to meet or even exceed our revenue targets." So it was quite straightforward. Obviously, as CEOs and boards do, they try to kind of like poke it around and find loopholes. Part of which sent us back to to kind of like rethink things that we put down there. But end of the day, we were able to kind of like not dodge the bullets, but answer the challenging questions and make the case for it. And
C'est la vie, c'est la vie.
Yep,
And once the business case was signed off, then I mean, how did you go about it? What was your initial approach then to making the shift?
Usually, what happens is you just put a point in time where, at this point, we're going to launch this. And my background is engineering. I found my way into marketing, but I'm an industrial engineer, where we look at, kind of like processes from a very, from an engineering perspective. And so I know that, building this whole machine for the launch is something that won't work. So you need to kind of like do it gradually, right? And there are a lot of like different milestones in the process that need to happen and in a certain order in order for this to start generating value. And then slowly but surely you can continue building it, improving it based on its performance and feedback that you get and so on and so forth. But the first thing I did was taking my counterparts from sales and making sure that we're fully aligned. Let's talk about this approach. We're now going to take a list and we're now going to put all our effort against this list and make sure we maximize the amount of accounts that we're able to win from this list. And this is a what's important to mention here that the main difference between the traditional marketing, B2B marketing approach, and ABM is the goal function. The goal function in traditional marketing is, think about this equation: max parentheses MQLs. You want to create as much MQLs as you want. And here with ABM, the goal function is max TAM touch points. You want to maximize the amount of touch points on a given account with the hypothesis that the more FaceTime and the more kind of like touch points you have with that account, the more likely they are to become your client. And you even start working on an account, even if you know that they're currently not in market for your solution, because the idea is that you'll be in conversations with them, and when they are in the market, you'll be the one helping them write that RFP, right? And when they're in the market, you'll be the first vendor to come to mind. So it's in, and there's also the difference between the reactive and proactive approach. You don't care where they're at the buying cycle, or if they are in a buying cycle at all. You're starting to work on that account, year round, starting to, and based on where they are in their awareness stages. So first of all, they're an unaware account. Okay, hi, I'm Optimove. This is, know my name, know the problem that I solve. Then once that there's that kind of awareness, then you start, explaining the case and why the right time is probably now if you don't have a solution in place. And if you do have, let's talk about why our solution is different. So again, to kind of like building it out. So the first step and the most important step is kind of like to get the buy-in of all of the commercial organization, making sure that everyone's bought into this approach and making sure that that everyone understands the value and the change, right? Because if you're saying, yeah, it's ABM, it's amazing, a lot of like hands in the air, then people don't necessarily understand what that means. You want to make sure that everything is clear, that everyone understands the implications, what this means, because this is not like it's not like a tactical decision. It's a strategic decision that has a ton of implications. And if you don't have a solid buy-in from all of the relevant stakeholders, it's probably going to fail, especially if you're looking into doing the full transition into an ABM approach.
Yeah. What about people then? What about your team? How did you sort of change perhaps how your sort of team did their day-to-day roles then?
It's a great question. So the structure of my team is based on marketing disciplines, right? So I have content, product marketing, growth and operations, comms, and so on and so forth. And the marketing disciplines don't change. Their subject changes. So for example, one example is content, right? So content is traditionally, SEO focused and kind of like creating value for your market. So the definition of the market changes, the definition of the funnel changes, but you still need to generate content. So kind of like understanding what are the main challenges of our total addressable market, one to few, one to many, and even sometimes one to one. We could create a specific blog post that is dedicated to grab the attention of an account because we weren't able to grab their attention, I don't know, using other tactics. So we can write a blog post that's kind of like reviewing Acme's CRM strategy, right? And then on social media, we tag them or write like an article. So also one of our initiatives, which I also speak about a lot, is that one of our content marketing drivers is a standalone publication that we started. Okay. And so think about the editor in chief, which is the content director on my team, reaching out to the CMO of this Acme company and offering an interview, right? So it's the same marketing disciplines, just again, all of your artillery is aimed towards the same target.
Makes sense. And what about from a tech point of view? I know that there's obviously account-based marketing tech out there to support you with this kind of stuff, but how did that sort of change in terms of your own marketing tech stack then?
Yep. So that's definitely something that we changed. We took a lot of different vendors and ad platforms and creating a significant tech stack there that would support this approach. So starting from, the ability to identify traffic to your website. Who are the companies that, are visiting your website? So reverse IP, but that's the easier things. Data enrichment in order to, to have that ability to be laser focused, you need to, grow the data and intel that you have on each and every one of those accounts. What's the tech stack that they currently use? What's the size of the business? How many people do they have on their CRM team? So those are also technologies that we brought in. The ability to orchestrate all of this operation under one umbrella. Website personalization. So today we have the ability of when we get, a website visit from account A, B, or C to create different experiences, right? It's a full change of the stack.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And sort of what sort of results are you seeing from it then? It's, I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this thinking this sounds, amazing because, good marketing is talking to your audience, and there's no better way than if you're talking to them one-on-one. But then some might be thinking, crikey, it's a hell of a shift, isn't it? To sort of, ignore that sort of addressable market, if you like. But from your perspective, then what kind of results are you seeing from this shift?
So the first thing you're going to see, and you're going to start panicking, is less pipeline. Less pipeline for sales. But then the other thing you're going to see is a crazy uptick in win rates, right? Because the idea is that it's a game of quality and not quantity, right? Your work, and I think that, a good way to describe this approach is like it's an inch wide, a mile deep versus that inch deep, mile wide of traditional, right? So you're working very deep on, a subset of the market, but your ability to win in that subset grows. So you're going to see your average selling point, your ASP going up, right? Because you're selling to the right accounts and you're focusing on the accounts that you can, that are the best fit and are willing to pay since they are such a good fit and since you can create such good value to them. You'll see, win rates go up because you're creating the right pipeline for sales. You will see the amount of leads and opportunities you create for sales going down, but that's fine. That's part of the approach. You just need to be aware of that. And then for us, at some point, the board and CEO came to me and said, "Listen, we need more opportunities." Fine, no worries. Yeah. So let's grow the total addressable market or the selected addressable market.
Yeah.
And then as long as you can maintain the performance figures and you don't see diminishing returns in terms of the quality of the accounts and the spend that you have, you're able to grow that pool that you're working on to a certain extent, given the resources that you have, amount of salespeople that can deal with these accounts. Also, a big change that we did on the sales side here is that there's a cap on the amount of accounts a salesperson can hold at any given time.
Okay.
Prospecting and so on and so forth. So again, it always needs to be a balance of all of your resources in order to optimize your deliverables. So fine, you want to create more deals. Let's make sure that we have more salespeople that can, catch these opportunities and maximize them. And let's kind of like create a mechanism to prioritize accounts and put them from the total addressable market into the selected addressable market. And that way you're able to create more opportunities.
And did you broaden on vertical then, or did you broaden on size of company? Which way did you go in order to sort of increase that pool or that list?
So it could be either, but for us, so our say total addressable market is somewhere in the realms of say 6,000-7,000 accounts.
Okay.
Our selected addressable market is more in the realms of 3,000-4,000, and so the ability to broaden is. Again, we still have a big chunk of accounts that we're not proactively targeting. If they come in organically because, I don't know, they heard of us from a friend of them, yes, we're definitely going to treat them. But we're not proactively putting effort and resource into those accounts. And then you want to take that subset and create some mechanism to prioritize between those accounts and then push them in and out. And there always needs to be a mechanism of account trading, right? Sometimes you just can't reach a certain account. So after how long do you say, okay, I've exhausted my efforts, let's trade them out and trade in another account, right? So you need to also have all those mechanisms in place. What happens with an account that we lost in the sales cycle? So there's also a treatment for closed lost accounts. There's kind of like a cool off period, and then, specific marketing and communications that are relevant to the sale process that they've been through, right? So thinking of all of those variables in this equation is critical to the success of this program.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And for anybody who's thinking about adopting this or trying it or moving to, like you've done, perhaps a pure sort of account-based marketing approach, what would you tell them? What sort of advice would you give them then, based on you've been through it? What did you find particularly challenging yourself?
So I'd ask them, who's the buyer? If their answer would be straightforward, I'd say, which companies do you sell to? If their answer would be straightforward, I'd say, fine, build a list. Build a list of 1,000.
They've got now, the ICP.
Exactly. Now, is it a single buyer or is it a committee? Usually it needs to be a committee. And then, okay, who are your personas? Who are the people that are involved in the sales cycles? Let's map them. So you have a list of accounts, a bank of functions, of personas that you're selling to. Fine. Now you have that list. You understand who is the subject of this marketing approach. Great. Now think of different ways to target them. List them. Email marketing is an easy start, right? SDR, BDR activity, easy start. Start with the things that are easier to kind of like create that initial POC. When we took a list of accounts and dedicated resources aimed towards that list, that's ABM. Now, we've seen an uplift of 10% in win rate, in conversion rate. Amazing. That's a POC. Now let's build on top of that, and on top of that, and on top of that. So kind of like, I'd say, if you're not sure that you want to go all in to this approach, start creating that kind of POC and build it well to be, low-hanging fruit, easy impact at the beginning, and slowly but surely build on top of that the more, say, sophisticated sides of the thing that are always also more costly. So all of the tech and all of that good stuff. There are plenty elements in existing traditional tech stack that could be easily transitioned into ABM. First one being, again, email marketing. Second one being content. You have your content creation resources. Ask them to create dedicated content for a micro vertical or for a specific account. See how that works for you. See how it's received. And then that usually creates the case. And then you start building it, and you have, a subset of your TAM that's treated in an ABM approach. And then that's kind of like an A/B test, right? You have your traditional marketing approach, your ABM approach, and then kind of like play with the knob until you see diminishing return on either of the ends.
And I guess if you involve sales at that early stage, very early stage, look, we're going to do a little experiment here with some accounts. Let's work, give me a salesperson. Let's identify these accounts together and get them in very, very early into the sort of the experiment, if you like. Then you can sort of run that up through the chain on the sales side as well, I guess.
Yeah. So many of my colleagues and my peers, in their sales org, they work with pods. That's a very common approach. So take a specific pod and run that test with them. But you need to be very, very specific with the selection of that pod, because they also need to be bought in. Yeah. Because the worst thing that could happen is, taking a pod that's totally not bought in, and they say, what's all this BS? Let me do what I'm used to be doing. I have my Rolodex. I know how to hunt down my accounts. Leave me alone. You don't want that to happen.
The old school way. Well, look, this has been a super interesting session, Amit. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. For people that would like to reach out to you, what's the best way of them doing that?
LinkedIn. Isn't that the case always, right?
Indeed. So, I think it is.
Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to answer any questions and, help thinking about things and sharing from my experience.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you. It was great being here.